Exactly 18 minutes past 8 p.m. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Faisal Kassim and welcome back to the second season of Live Real Talk, where we get the interviews that make the news. Of course, our focus area more than ever now is policies, issues with politics, governance and leadership. On matters security, of course, looking at the borderlines, looking at the security of our country and the security forces, looking at matters economy as well, inflation, budgets, to mention but a few. Human rights moving from citizenship, among us many other things. This will be the focus area of our conversation this and every Thursday, being the 1st of September 2022. I am so glad that you could join us right here, right now on Live Real Talk. And I'm your host, Faisal Kassim. And tonight, I'm honored to be joined by the Bwires. Can somebody say Bwires? Are they brothers? Here to find out. Dancan Bwire from, who's a researcher at Africa Check, and of course Victor Bwire, who is our mentor, our father figure from the Media Council of Kenya. Welcome, gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Thank you so much.
And tonight we are talking about matters to do with demystifying misinformation and disinformation. You know, we're having a conversation with my colleagues at the gallery just a few minutes before we started this conversation. And some people are like, demystify what? Demystify, come here, boss, relax. Ishoni Awasomi.
Yes.
Ishoni Awasomi. But before we delve deeper into the conversation, I'd like us to just listen in and watch what Kenyans have to say for as far as misinformation and disinformation is concerned on the streets of Nairobi. Aban?
In this period, everybody has become an expert at election news and lots of misinformation, disinformation in social media and in other places. And now it is so difficult to know what to consume because everybody is an expert and everybody is giving very different information. Sometimes information that can cause problems.
We want to say that everybody has become a blogger, everybody has become a news anchor, everybody has become a broadcaster.
And these things that if we really follow them up and we are not guided about them, they cause, you know, kind of fracas. And because you get information that does not make a lot of sense in it.
I've heard of so-and-so has won, we have taken this and that county, this and that constituency, only to find out later that the actual position was different. And of course it's disappointing. You know, it raises high hopes in 1 minute and then disappointment the next, and it is not a good feeling. It was not a good feeling for me, not a good feeling for many people.
Wow, thanks so much, Aban Shihemi, right there for that piece. Too many sources of information creating anxiety, creating panics within, you don't know which is which. Actually, there was a joke moving around during the transmission of the presidential election results saying the leading presidential candidate is dependent on which station you're watching. Right? But anyway, first things first, I think I'm going to start with Dancan. What is the difference between misinformation and disinformation in this context, for the sake of all viewers who are watching tonight?
Thank you, Faisal. And as he said, my name is Dancan Bwire. I work as a researcher at Africa Check. And part of what we do is trying to look at what people post on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and try to detect the potential of the information they have. We're trying to look at what people post on social media and try to see how, if the information they're posting is misinforming. And so we have a way of trying to go around it, and among them is trying to use the credible website to look at what they posted is accurate or not. So we've seen that, we've seen a lot of that. And what we do is the only disadvantage we have right now is trying to chase after those people who are posting misinformation. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The misinformation or the disinformation?
So the misinformation, to explain it in a very simple way, is for misinformation, this is just information that is not accurate.
Misleading information.
Misleading information. But when talking about disinformation, this means that this person is sharing this information deliberately with an intention to mislead.
Harm.
Yes.
To mislead, which has the repercussions, which is going to be harmful
yes.
at the end of the day.
Yes.
Bwire,
yes.
Victor Bwire for that matter. Yeah, I think nitakuwa na shida hapa sana. Sasa nitakuwa Faisal Bwire. Thank you so much. Bwire, Victor Bwire, sources of information, it is one way or another linked with media. I mean, if it were 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, then we could strike out a balance between what is going out through the media and what is going on through one-on-one interaction. But again, right now, a good percentage of misinformation and disinformation actually goes on through the media. Talk of digital media or the mainstream media. As the Media Council of Kenya, I'm sure it is something that you have noted, right?
Yes.
What's your take on that?
Thank you, Faisal, and thanks, Dancan. One, it's a big problem because what disinformation and misinformation, the good thing I like and I must appreciate you is that you have made a deliberate distinction between what people purport to call fake news. Because when it's fake, it's not news. So the right word is always disinformation, misinformation, in terms when you are referring to inaccurate information and related. So the issue of fake news is never there. And according to the UNESCO, actually, they have already said there's nothing called fake news. So we need to finish because that was one, a weaponization against credible media. When once they just call you, for example, HorizonTV is fake news, you know, they have already made people hate you. So that's one thing, so I appreciate that. Two, the other thing is that, like you said, we are concerned about access to information because journalists depend on information. The major business journalists do is information, get information, analyze, and share. So we are running a project called Information Integrity, for example, because we are aware that there's an overload of information all over.
To what extent is misinformation and disinformation in the media space?
It's a huge, huge problem. We have done. It's a huge problem right now. While what we call traditional media, especially on their traditional platforms, work a lot to minimize. So you'll find they have fact-checking desks, they have all those things, the traditional media. But their online platforms, like Horizon online platform, the misinformation and disinformation level is just the same as what we say is so much on Facebook, is so much, yet it's almost 70 to 80%. I mean, there's a study that was done in 2017. I did a study for Amweek, and we have done another study. The level of misinformation, especially on our new platforms, be they for individual influencers or be they for mainstream media, but the online platforms, is nearly 70 to 80%. Huge, 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 especially in the segments of breaking news, those sharp news, short, what they are calling promotional information. In our news at 7, we have this and this. There is a lot of misinformation, and largely misinformation, because what we are seeing, a lot of disinformation is largely on individual platforms. The people are calling influencers and the rest who are paid, obviously, to do. Somebody can pay somebody to run something against you so that it trends. But mainly what we are seeing in our media, especially media that's regulated by the Media Council of Kenya, is misinformation. And
not disinformation.
Largely misinformation in the mainstream.
Yes.
But obviously as a reader, because I'm in the media space, I read, I interact, I find a lot of disinformation largely on digital platforms by influencer individuals. And you know, in Kenya there are individuals who have a bigger online following than a media house.
Yes,
there's a person with 300,000, 1 point something followers online. So those people are even bigger than a media house. So that's why, again, when you bring such discussion, we're happy to enlighten people. That sometimes people think I can only get swayed if I see something on Horizon TV. But there are people who are more than a media house in terms of, I mean, we are just informally with you talking about some 2-3 people here. When they post something in 2 seconds, they have 100,000 likes and this.
The ripple effect.
The ripple effect.
Yes.
So and that is happening, and that's why sometimes we are talking about responsible use of media. That media is there. In other places, people are using it for progress, because information is supposed to help people progress. Information on weather, on investments, you know, good information integrity. What kind of information are you sharing? But when you just flood people, like what we are saying, flood people, we have election results, for example, where we have 1,000 election results from everybody. We don't know now which one is IBC, which one is individual, which one is which media house. You know, so yes, there's information on election, but about what how true and credible is this information? How helpful is it? And how helpful is it? Because information only makes sense if it's helpful to the consumers.
True.
I think just to add on that point, I think just as you said, we have technology right now, and I think technology is making the spread of false information worse. But the good thing is we have fact-checking organizations that are coming up to try to fight this misinformation. And if you allow me, I'll take the viewer through the processes that what we've seen before the election, during the election, and after elections.
During the court. Now, yes. I just want to, before you go, because that was going to be my next question, but yes. The question before that was, so you flagged off a couple of information that are false in the media space, right?
Yes.
And this information, so question number one is, how far had they spread? That is number one. Number two, after you flag them off and you want to correct that information, how far do they spread, the correct information now? Right? If you can give just a rough estimate. So for example, this false information had spread to an extent of, let's say, 1,000 views or 1,000 retweets, right?
Yes.
So when you've corrected, you've flagged it, and then you've corrected that information. So this correct information, how far does it spread? That
I think I'll handle it this way. I think the problem we are currently facing is that this information usually is out there before we are trying to play something called a catch-up.
Catch-up, yes.
Yes, so people with huge following, they are spreading this information deliberately, but by the time it reaches us, people have already have accessed that in misinformation. And I think that is one thing that we've been trying to talk with Facebook and Twitter to help us try to stop it even before before they spread. And so some of the things that Facebook and Twitter, for example, are doing is they alert us on some of the potential misinformation that have been reported. And so where we were and where we are, I think there's progress, because right now, the moment we report it, they notify us that there's this information that is going to be potentially harmful, check it. And then within a short period of time, we flagged it.
That's a disinformation now.
Yes, disinformation. Okay. But again, we are having, as you said, that is the main challenge, that right now we are playing catch-up game, but as we progress, I think we'll be in a position to work with the people who are spreading this information. Like we are in a position to combat them before they put them out there.
Interesting. So take us through the process now of actually fact-checking, or rather doing a background search, or looking beyond that information, trying to see how legit or how true that information is. Thank
you, Faisal. We have, first of all, we have some telltale signs of if an information is not correct. So there are some key points that you need to look out for while interacting with the information on social media. Number one, look at the spelling and of a post that has been posted by a Twitter user or a Facebook user. Try to look at this, the spelling, and if it has spelling errors. Majorly, these information that is spread and is false, these people sometimes are not keen enough to put out correct information with correct spellings. Okay. So that is one of the telltale signs. Number two, is it provoking your emotions? So most people, while sharing, most of these, when it comes in terms of graphic, in terms of videos, in terms of audios, majorly most of them have that provoking ability. They provoke your emotions, and you start feeling so angry about something. And if it says that they have quoted somebody, then you have to think twice before sharing. So what we usually tell our audience is, number one, always be skeptical. Don't find information and immediately try to share. First of all, be skeptical. Ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? So to the process you're asking me, how we check. After doing that, it depends with what you're working on. For example, if it's an image, for example, the first thing you do is do something called a reverse image search. And a reverse image search usually involves uploading the image on Google and trying to see when this image was first posted. What we saw during this election is somebody is uploading an image that was uploaded in 2015 or 2016. Violence, for example, in Kisumu or Mathare, for example. And then he's saying that, you know what, violence has started because of this election. So what you need to do is upload that image on Google, try to do the reverse image search, check when it was first posted, and then you can have your conclusion. You'll find that a certain media house had posted it in 2015 or 2016. Yeah. And for videos, just do a screenshot or a screen grab of part of the video, upload it same. We have tools that we usually use to debunk. Upload it the same way you did on the image, and then try to look at some of the results that you are getting. If you are finding that the video had been posted in 2017, then that tells you that this information is not correct.
Interesting.
And some others, they are very open, clear aspects of these videos. For example, if somebody is editing a video, the part that has been added usually has a different background voice. For example, if they've filmed somebody like Deputy President William Ruto speaking, and they have combined maybe two videos from a different event, you'll get to hear that part that was
the disparity in voices.
Yes.
It won't be as consistent.
Yes.
Victor, you've been in the media space, and you know the urge and the thirst to be the first one to break the news. You know, so it's something that comes. You don't train that in schools when it comes to journalism. You always learn about authenticity and accuracy of information at the end of the day. But in this fast-moving world where news break on the second, every other minute, every other second, we have something breaking, right? So how do you balance the authentication process and being the first one, just supposing about being the first one to break that news, being the first person with that news outside there, so that you get that legitimacy, you get that the updated news outlet that breaks with this information the first one. So how do you balance the two, Victor?
Thank you, Faisal. One of the challenges like Bwire is raising is purely out of laziness. We have very lazy journalists, because two is failure to adhere to regulations and professionalism. Because a number of what Bwire is raising are purely people who pick clips, news, and reproduce. You know, what does the copyright law say? If I'm going to use news from HorizonTV, I must give credence to where I got there. But a number of people just want, you get somebody running a news item in Busia, then on Mombasa, then you ask, do you have a correspondent in Mombasa? They just went and picked a video on a national radio station and they're playing, and they are not telling you. And that has played a big role in spreading some of these fake sounds, and because you just speak, you don't even want to know. Because if I'm going to borrow your clip, for example, I'll call and say, Faisal, I want to use your item, blah, blah, do you give me permission? Yeah, then I'll be able to know.
And then you credit at the end of the day.
Yes, I credit you. So I'll be able to know, you tell me, but Victor, we don't have such news item here. Where did you get it? So most of our people want to do what is called return to sender journalism. Just get and forward. Just get, there's no value addition. And which is a basic tenet in journalism. In fact, we don't call it fact-checking. Truth in journalism is fundamental. How do you establish truth? Because that's what we are taught in journalism, that journalism is only different from fiction by writing truth and sources. How do you get your stories from? So that's one major thing where people have failed, that I just get something. But we say right now, you rather come to the market late with factual news than be the first to break news that is wrong. Then you are going to be sued for defamation. Your radio station TV station is going to lose credibility. You get yourself into problem. So you rather come, because even if you assess news consumption nowadays, is people want depth. Because there's a lot of some of these things we get online. If you just wanted to get a summary of what happened in Supreme Court today, you just go to Facebook, you'll get it. But I want now, look at football yesterday. Everybody knew how, because people were watching online.
Yes.
But you only add value and still allow your Arsenal, Liverpool to be seen if you add more depth. Details, that people did not know. And when you are now going to depth, you're talking to sources, you'll establish that this news item or this thing I was following was either wrong or something. Yes. But many of us are in a hurry to be the first on the market. We want clickbait, we want what, without caring about the information,
the sources and
the information and the credibility of information. So those are basic things that people must do. As a journalist, I must always look for what are my sources. If I go to, like you said, story on terrorism, who are my sources? We have a number of journalists who have no single source. I told you I'm a reporter from Parliament. I report for so and so in Parliament, but it has no single number of NMP speaker. It doesn't have. So we must also go to the root of why this hurry for people to want to break. Because we talk. I mean, look at, like we said, the level of, for example, disinformation and misinformation on mainstream platforms or on people, even who are influencers, but who are responsible. You know, there are very responsible bloggers and influencers in this country who will never carry just hogwash and everything.
True.
But there are people who just want cheap. You give them something, you want something to trend against Faisal, you give them some 30,000.
It's all about trending.
And we cheapen information because information is critical for all we do. Investment, weather, sickness, you know, information is critical. But when people cheapen information and make it so cheap, then people start now also losing trust in institutions like media, which people depended on. So we need to be sure that the information, we put everything, just journalistic requirements. Somebody brings you news, says this has been said in the High Court. You ask the first question, High Court, where is it placed? Like we were talking about the purported airplane at
yes, Uhuru Park, yes,
a human, you know,
quote unquote crashed.
I mean, because in journalism, we tell people, put yourself in the shoes of your reader or your viewer. Now, as a viewer, would you imagine an aeroplane in Uhuru Park? You know, even before you post that thing. But I belong.
Doesn't make sense.
Yes, I belong to. In fact, like you said, the right thing. A lot of time, news is common sense. There are some of these things somebody just tells you, Victor has done this, and then you ask them, is that normal for a normal human being? You know, even as just. But many of us, we are always absent. Journalists are always absent. They go to press conferences. That's the time they put a recorder and go to walk around. When somebody has made something off cuff or when the phone went off the recorder, he has no background. You know, you ask them, what happened? I say, let me listen to the tape first, because he was not following. People go to function without even a notebook and a pen, and these are journalists. So most of these things can be done. And if you look at and it's possible, if we just focus on our work and ask myself, I'm giving out this information, but for what? If I'm today sent to, or I'm an influencer or what, and I'm following the court process, for example. What is it that I want Kenyans to know? You know, that's what I ask myself. But if my work is just to forward, because like what I've seen, especially from the two parties, is they have one major person who does one major write up,
and then the others speak from that. Which I just wanted to bring that up, yeah, because you've spoken highly and you've spoken in depth and comprehensively on the certified distribution outlets of information. This is a certified, this is a media, this is a journalist. They have regulators like the Media Council of Kenya. They're there. So now my question now is to Dancan. On the quote-unquote uncertified, the bloggers that you mentioned. You know, we have these people who are actually being perceived as the voices of authority. For example, when you see Dennis Itumbi speaking, there you know this is the Hustler Nation speaking. When you see, for example, someone like Robert Alai speaking, you know, this is a voice of authority in the Azimio camp, for example. You know, so these are uncertified outlets of information.
Actually, Faisal, those guys are uncertified because if you looked at the Meta community rules and regulations, if you looked at Google their community service when you are joining, they are nearly sort of code of ethics for journalists. Most of those things are almost, it's just that people just want to ignore.
But again, the reason as I'm calling them uncertified is because, for example, if today I'm here and spreading false information, then you're going to reprimand me as the Media Council. Why? Because I submit to the Media Council. Right? You're going to reprimand me. But again, so how many information have these people been sharing which are false information?
Huge. Yeah, that's
right?
the worry.
Who's reprimanding
them?
And
the technical giants seem to be unable to catch up.
Precisely.
Yeah. And I think to add on that point, you asked about who is now responsible for this. And I think... No,
I'm just asking you as the fact checkers, you know. So these people who are quote-unquote uncertified.
Yes.
So how do you deal with them? I mean, Victor has already told us how they deal with us.
Yes.
You know, how we should conduct ourselves, of which the second part of this conversation is going to delve much into the policies, right? But right now, just looking at what's really happening right now. So such people, uncertified sources of information, how do you deal with them?
So let me just start with the point that I wanted to add on what Victor said initially, and on the point of where do we run to? Who do we trust? And I wanted to say that even media these days, the way he was saying, it is somehow these days they rush to publish information that is not accurate. So if we tell our audience now, only be relying on media, then we'll be lying to them, because even media sometimes they mess up. They rush to, like, because of technology, everybody wants to be the first one to break the news, as you said. But to add on that point, I just wanted you to give me a minute or so to just explain what we saw just before elections, during and after elections.
Sure, please.
So the unfortunate thing is right now, just before election, we have a tremendous amount of false information that usually goes around. And the unfortunate thing is this information is getting used to, there are like political actors are using false information as tools to advance their political interests. And so they have divided people into their supporters into bloggers, for example, media that is not unverified, so for example, and for example, political actors and their parties. These are the main people who, in this election, before, during, and after, we saw them in action. So I'll start with the bloggers. And I think bloggers, they usually do this as a deliberate thing. Like, it's not misinformation, they're doing it deliberately. This is
disinformation.
Disinformation. And the only way to catch up with these people is to detect that information early enough. And I think that's what we as fact checkers have been doing. The moment they post their information and we establish that this is not correct, we are there to immediately detect it, do it immediately, and then flag it. And how we do it in terms of flagging, you were asking me in the first question, how do we prevent it from spreading? So how we do it is, after doing the article, the fact checking, the verification, and then we rate it, because we usually rate. If we have rated it false, then we cover that information they have shared. And so the circulation and the spreading will not be as much as it would have been. So if something was going to be shared maybe 1,000 times, with this caution on top, I know you've seen it, we usually put a cover on some certain types of information or images and say, this is false information.
Yes.
It reduces that circulation. And then another thing is, this page usually are given warnings that, you know what, you are spreading misinformation. And if you don't come into line, and then this page will pull it down.
Will be flagged, and will be reported.
Yes. And one of the bigger challenges, Dancan, which we have discussed even with your colleagues, has been IP. In fact, the biggest people who are suffering, leave alone this information people pick from other sources, news in Nigeria or South Africa. The biggest challenge is public institutions. Forged letters, fake letters, judiciary, parliament. People just write. And now, what now is happening, I pick a letter from Media Council, for example, because we have also suffered. Somebody just creates a Media Council logo. Now, what is now in our fact-checking days, we will pick that letter and write the word fake. But the letter is still circulating. So you see, the impact sometimes is so slow, is so little, that the same letter with fake is still spreading.
So some people say there is no bad publicity. Publicity at the end of the day.
So we have suffered, especially public agencies and public. Look at the amount of letters purportedly that came from IBC, for example. Yes. People are just sitting and crafting things. And
I think one of those things that we've done to make sure that these things do not continue is that we've always been looking for all those that have been shared. We have tools like CrowdTango, for example, where you can just search and find all those fake letters and where they have been posted. So we usually look for all those that have huge shares and block them. So all those people who will be accessing this information, they'll just be accessing it with that warning that this information is cooked.
Interesting. Now I think we just need to go on a very short break, but again when we come back now we look at in terms of policy, what you guys have been doing in terms of Africa Check, Media Council here. I know they've been really being on our neck. Especially for the first I think 7 years. You've really been on our neck on matters false information, misinformation and disinformation. We're going to come back and discuss much more on that after the break. Please do not touch that dial, because we're going to be back in a moment.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Verse of the day.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ولا يأتل أولو الفضل منكم والسعة أن يؤتوا أولي القربى والمساكين والمهاجرين في سبيل الله وليعفوا وليصفحوا ألا تحبون أن يغفر الله لكم ألا تحبون أن يغفر الله لكم والله غفور رحيم.
قال تعالى في محكم تنزيله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Ninasaha kutoka pwani.
هذا الدين قال الله قال الرسول قال الصحابة هم أولو العرفان. انتهى.
Ili kuongoza kwenye njia iliyonyoka.
Sikizeni hadithi hii ya Mtume alayhi salatu wasalam.
Hakuna atakayeweza kumfungia mtu mlango ambaye Mwenyezi Mungu alimfungulia.
Kuimarisha imani yako.
Thabbit qulubana ala dinik wa ala ta'atik.
Ungana na mashekh wetu kutoka pwani kwenye mimbar.
Mimbar zinamwakilisha Mtume sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Ni Jumamosi na wakati saa 3 usiku katika Horizon TV, runinga uipendayo. Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for keeping it live real talk. My name is Faisal Kassim, and I mean that was a surprise when I was just going through my notes and then Aban decided to take me on air. Asante sana Aban. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with us. And now we have like 9 minutes, and we just need to keep this as brief, but at the same time comprehensively, educative as possible. So I'm going to start with you, Victor. For as far as misinformation and disinformation is concerned, as the Media Council of Kenya, we've seen abroad journalists being reprimanded for having spread fake information. In the country, how many have you reprimanded so far in the country?
Thank you. Big number. So far we have issued more than 20 show cause letters to various media houses.
Have you reprimanded anybody?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We have sent show cause letters.
Show cause letters, that is show cause, but again, convicted now. Let me just let me change terminologies. Have you convicted anybody? We've seen people being stripped of their licenses because of misinformation.
Media Council has not reached that stage because we also are aware of the challenges that are there. And one of the things, because remember, Media Council is also, much as it's a regulator, is also a media development institution. We are supposed to protect press freedom. Okay. So if we start reprimanding and banning people from practicing, then we're also not helping. But what we have done progressively at 2 levels is we are running a project called Information Integrity. What quality type of information are journalists accessing and sharing? So instead of just punishing them and reprimanding them, that we engage them. So we started with the setting up of a fact-checking desk, a very huge fact-checking desk, and we have actually an MOU with the African Check. So part of the work we do jointly with them is training of journalists and helping them set up fact-checking desks. So that's something we have done with African Check for quite some time. And it has been very nice, especially community media outlets, independent content producers, and other media houses that have sought it. So we have done that across some counties, and it has helped. And the other thing is we jointly with the UNDP, we started a project called iVerify. iVerify is a fact-checking platform that was used during elections in Zambia, and Kenya is the second country in Africa to use that. So these again involved recruitment and training of 80 people who then work with fact-checkers. We have about 18 fact-checkers at the Media Council, who then, so we combine what we do with Africa Check. Then we have also had discussion with Google and Facebook around how do we help them in alerting media houses that are spreading platforms that are prevalent. So that has been happening. So training of journalists, setting up of fact-checking desks in media houses has been one of the, so that we train them, we help them understand and appreciate. Obviously, African Check has been one of our resource persons during those trainings. They give the journalists tools on what they can use in minimizing that misinformation. At a policy level, like you ask, we are now running a big project called Media and Digital Literacy. Media Information and Digital Literacy is a project, in fact, we are working even on a bill, a draft bill, and want to work with the Parliament so that we enact an information and data bill, which then will see Kenya adopt, especially Ministry of Education, Information, training colleges, vocational training. We start targeting especially youth at adult levels. And this is what happens in most of the Scandinavian countries. The Media Council there is what they do is what's called media literacy. Help people understand and appreciate that all information you see in media is not true. So we help people, and we want to target school-going children, because much of it is at that level, and they can tell you from their research, a lot of people who circulate information is youth. So we want to target youth in schools and colleges with information and data literacy to help them start knowing how to look for information on trusted sources, how to debunk, like what Dancan has explained. We help them so that they, because remember, in things like violent extremism, recruitment, they're also using online media. And during the corona period, when schools closed and they gave even students bundles to be accessing information at home, a lot of people are not using those platforms just for education alone, for classwork. Somebody's online, he will find himself on any website
getting information.
So that's why we are targeting schools, that we must work together with schools, a policy at a policy level. So we have already, we worked with the Senate last year, and we hope once the Parliament settles to work with them to get a bill and an act eventually on media and data information literacy, because that will help us then to mainstream teaching of this, something like debunking of information at school level, so that it's even a subject in our curriculum. Because online, online technology is where we are going. We can't be talking about cybercrime acts to arrest people again when we need to be using technology to advance. So how do we do that? We must start already having responsible use of media content by at school level, start exposing children, students, that not all information you get from information sources or data is correct information.
Interesting.
The tools we have been using, if you get a video that you suspect, how do you fact check it?
Locally, of course.
Locally. So that's what we are working at a policy level.
Interesting. I'd like to bring in Dancan, but whatever answer you're going to give it to me, I just wanted to integrate with these two. One, there's a question that came and I just can't do away with it. Say, debunking misinformation takes 10 times the energy to create it. How factual is this phrase? So as you're answering this question, what are the policies that you're putting to protect this space from misinformation and disinformation as Africa Check? Briefly, please, in the interest of time.
Thank you, Faisal. Some of the things that we've tried to do this time round, and I think it started since Africa Check started, is we've been trying to work with stakeholders like the media station. We've been working with the university students, going there and training them and informing them that these are the ways that you can debunk misinformation. And I think also we've had programs with UNDF, for example, where we sit down with the high school students and tell them that these are kind of things that you should spot in information that will make you be suspicious, and don't share it, for example. And then generally we've been trying to build a culture of fact-checking, whereby we are having to teach people the basics so that they are not consumed easily by misinformation. And then in our information also, we've been doing something called Impact, where we approach media houses and those people who share this misinformation, and tell them, look, what you've shared is not accurate. So can you please pull it down? We have facts, we have figures. So those are some, and sometimes most of the cases they comply and they try to reduce that. Also, we've been having media interviews like these ones, where we teach people generally what to do when they encounter misinformation. And so perhaps maybe you can just come up again with that question. That
because the question you was talking about is the issue of expensiveness. I just come and say Kenya has a population of 60 million. You know, that's just a figure, this information. But for you, the fact checker, you must go now to the census. The researchers must be paid to get the fact.
I think fact checking usually, as he has said, usually takes a lot of effort. And the way information spread, it goes faster than how we try to combat it. So, for example, by the time maybe we've done doing a fact check of one check, maybe this information has spread. But the goodness is, the moment we block it or we cover it, then that spread that could have been anticipated greatly reduces. So it is true that it travels fast, but we've been catching up, and I think we are doing it well.
Wow, interesting. Thanks so much. So I wanted to give you a chance for parting shots, but again, it's seconds to time.
No,
please.
It's fine. I mean,
allow me.
It has been nice.
Right? It has been nice? It's been good?
Nice. No, very nice.
Thanks so much, guys. I'll just leave you with that one verse from the Holy Quran that says, فَإِنْ جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَأٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. That's what Allah says. This came over 1,400 years ago. When someone comes to you with any information, then please just verify. Take your time. Verify the news before spreading it further. That's the Holy Quran. That's not me. That's not Victor. That's not Dancan. But again, amazing. Thank you so much. And I need to register apologies from Fatia Mohammed Noor, who was to join us. But again, she got another assignment. I'm sure you're going to watch it in the next few minutes on KTN News. Thanks so much for making time for us. This has been real. It's been good. See you next week, same place, same time, with another yet amazing conversation. I've been Faisal Kassim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
Dancan, sorry about that. Time imekimbia sana.